Our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so I would ask you to rise and join me. Start with some housekeeping. The Planning Board continues to voluntarily offer remote participation. So if someone is on the board and is remote, we will do roll call votes. If any member of the public or an abutter wishes to attend remotely, they may do so via www.zoom.us with your browser, your computer, or smartphone. The meeting ID is 754-663-912. You may also dial in by phone. The first of those numbers is area code 646-558-8656. And again, the meeting ID is the same, 754-663-912. If you wish to address the board, do a *9 on your phone to raise your hand and you'll be recognized. If you have been recognized and you wish to speak, do a *6 to toggle your mute and unmute. The emergency exit is at the back of the room where you came in, and also to my right and your left. The elevators are not operable if there is an alarm activation, so if you need assistance, first responders will help you. I will now introduce the members and staff who are present tonight. To my far right, Mr. Sioris, Planning Director.
Good evening.
Ms. Wilson, his Administrative Executive Secretary. In the back is our recording clerk, Ms. Carvello.
Good evening.
Mr. Chase, who is the Town Administrator's Rep.
Good evening.
Mr. Healy, Member.
Good evening.
Mr. Grenice, Town Council Liaison.
Good evening.
Mr. O'Connor, Vice Chair.
Good evening.
To my far right, Mr. Owen Provencher, who is our video liaison. Mr. Mark LaRue, who is representing the town's engineering department.
Good evening.
Ms. Lavoy, alternate.
Good evening.
Mr. Fishman, member.
Good evening.
Mr. Feinauer, member.
Good evening.
Mr. Myers, member.
Hello.
Mr. Malaby is absent, so I would like to sit Ms. Lavoy for Mr. Malaby. And do we have a volunteer to be Secretary Pro Tem?
I can do it.
All right, so Mr. Healy has volunteered. He will be Secretary Pro Tem. First item on the agenda is matters of escrow. We have escrow ID 24-20, McMaster Development LLC, parcel ID 30070. And Mr. Soros, would you run down that for us, please?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, yeah, it's, as you said, number 2420. The applicant is Franklin Meadows Condominiums. Steve McMaster Development is the developer. Property's located at 16 Franklin Street. These are the new townhouses just outside the parking lot here that are under construction right on the corner of Rollins and Franklin Street, Pearl Street, I mean. Action request to please release cash escrow drawn in Enterprise Bank in the amount of $50,427.50 for the above noted project. The amount to be retained is $20,090.50. This escrow is non-interest bearing. It has been signed by Mike Fowler, Public Works Director, Mark LaRue, Bob Mackey from Building, and myself, and staff would recommend approval.
What is the board's pleasure?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Grady, seconded by Mr. Myers to approve the release as presented. Any discussion? If not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
And Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next item on the agenda is another escrow, ID 24-21, Marjorie A. Palmer Revocable Trust, parcel ID 03128. Can you please review this
Same
for
thing,
us?
Mr. Chairman. Again, Marjorie Palmer is the applicant. It was a two-lot subdivision on Stark Road. Action requested, please release cash escrow drawn on Santander Bank in the amount of $32,947.50. For the above noted project, the amount to retain is zero. This is a non-interest bearing escrow account. Again, it's been signed by Mike Fowler, Public Works Director, Mark LaRue, Bob Mackey from Building, and myself. Staff would recommend approval.
What is the board's pleasure?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Greenies, seconded by Myers to approve the release as presented. Any discussion? None, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Greenies?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
And Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next, we move on to approval of minutes for June 19th, 2024. Does anyone have a chance to read those? And if so, are there any errors or omissions?
Mr. Chair, seeing nobody raising their hands, I move to accept the minutes of June 19th, 2024, as written.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Greenies to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Any abstentions?
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Mr. Myers abstains. All else voting in favor. Correspondence. You're lucky there's nothing in the correspondence folder this evening.
Okay.
Other business. First item of other business is a second extension request for parcel ID 05038-001, 109 Rockingham Road. Mr. Ciores?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this one again is a site plan approved at 109 Rockham Road. This is the former junkyard or the salvage yard on between Clan Haven and the new fire station on the south side of Rockingham Road. It was approved back in January of 24 for a mixed-use development, apartments, townhouses, and commercial restaurant. This is the second request. When the owner is requesting a second, we ask that somebody be here. So Doug McGuire, who's the engineer, is representing the owner. As is happening, the state is really delayed on getting their alteration of terrain permits, the AOT, which has taken a long time, so that's contributing to the extra time. So staff would recommend approval. Doug McGuire is here if there's any questions, and this would put the approval to January of 2025.
So if the engineer would come forward and just give the board a summary of the specific reasons for a second extension?
Yeah, Doug, do you want to come up for a second, please?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Doug McGuire with the Dubay Group. We were, I guess, technically approved right around this time last year. We requested an extension in January for 6 months to finalize things, because at the time, we hadn't even received AOT comments at the time of that request. We have received the comments. So everything's been submitted and we're working through those. There are a couple items that require some coordination with the owner, and we've been working to get sign off. We actually have to go on and do a couple additional test pits on the property per the alteration of terrain request, and that's something we needed sign off from the owner. And I will say that the applicant, the buyer, and the owner, the seller, are working through some legal matters as well as far as the closing, and so that has taken a little bit more time than anticipated. They're working through some legal items to allow them to close. So for that reason, and also the alteration of terrain, we're asking for that additional extension.
And so you're asking for an extension of 6 months?
Whatever the board's pleasure. I know that sometimes when legal matters get involved, things can take more time, and I don't want to delay the board or belabor the board with an additional request. But if 6 months is all you're willing to give, then we'll accept that. But
Well, we have in the past granted more. Let me ask, what is your confidence level that 6 months will be sufficient?
I'm very confident that the alteration terrain will be handled in that time. I just don't know. There is a lawsuit going on right now, and they're in a discovery period to iron something out with the closing. So that part could take a little bit longer. So if the board were open to a year extension, that would be preferable.
All right, so when we get to board discussion, we can consider that, because we rarely grant third extensions, so. Okay, any other comments?
If there's any questions regarding anything further, I can be happy to answer them, but
Okay, any questions or comments from members of the public or members of the board on this? Mr. Healy?
I would be in favor of the year extension, given the circumstances. Reviewing this project, I think it's a great project for that area, and if they're thinking of a year, I would be okay with that.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either. It doesn't sound like the issues that are preventing this from going forward are of the applicant's own making. So I would go along with a 12-month extension also.
Okay, is anyone
I would also concur.
not okay with a 12-month extension? Okay, who would like to make the motion with that
Make the motion,
editorial
Mr. Chair.
change? Because it says 6 months, you gotta
To
read it.
motion to approve a 12-month extension of the conditional approval granted to PID 05038-001, 109 Rockingham Road. The new expiration date will be
June 19th.
June 19th, 2025.
Okay, moved by O'Connor,
Second.
seconded by Myers. Any discussion? None, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Greenies?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is a first extension request for parcel ID 31072, 46 Crystal Avenue. Is this yours?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is a first request. This is the old Pizza Hut, Nestle's Cafe for the new members on Crystal Ave. The site plan was approved back in February of this year for the new Bangor Savings Bank. They'd like to ask for 6 months extension. Mark and I, staff's working with them as we speak. They're real close to getting the plans finalized by August, but they want to play it safe if they need a few more weeks. But they are going to go out to bid later this summer and hope to start construction in the fall. So staff would recommend approval on the 6 months.
And is anyone here to represent that?
No, we don't ask for the first one, just the second one.
How confident do you think they are that 6 months is going to be good for them?
Mark, I mean, they're close, like 90%.
Yeah, they've submitted most of the documents for the conditions, and I provided them the escrow number, so they're very close.
Okay, sounds good. So any questions from the board on this? Not, what is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, motion to approve a 6-month extension of the conditional approval guarantee to PID 31072, 46 Crystal Ave on February 7th, 2024. The new expiration date will be February 7th, 2025.
Second.
It moved by O'Connor, seconded by Myers. Any discussion? If not, we'll poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Greenies?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next item on the agenda is planning director and chairman updates. Do you have anything, Mr.
Just a
Jones?
reminder, we only have, around the summer schedule, so we have one more meeting in August, which will be the 14th, and then we go back to 2 meetings after Labor Day in September.
It's your last meeting, right?
My last meeting will be next month, yeah.
Okay.
We have a
So I have
couple-
to make my
pilot on it.
perpetual appeal for additional volunteers to serve as alternates. We have 2 open alternate seats, and we would love to have you join us because we have a lot of fun here. So just go onto the town's website and do the volunteer form, and we'll be happy to host you. Mr.
I just want to make a
Greenies.
comment about the room. Is that okay? I just want to make a comment to the public about the room.
Oh, yeah, it looks like a yard sale.
So I just want to apologize for the room, to the public. Town meeting room never looks like this. We said it at the council meeting last night at the beginning. It's like this because they're doing work in the finance and the executive offices here. So I just want to apologize for the way the room looks.
Yeah, the stuff isn't really for sale. I'm kidding. Any other comments or reports? Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing. Shirley, I'm going to mangle this. Siska? Mark John Boulay, parcel ID 01016-014 and 01016-00912 and 7 Independence Ave for a lot line adjustment.
Yep, I'll do my staff report, then I can turn.
Siesta.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do a quick staff report and then turn over to Tim. But as you said, the applicant is Shirley Sieska. I think I said that right, Shirley? We talked. And Mark John Booley. Again, the address is 12 and 7 Independence Ave. Purpose of the plan is for a lot line adjustment between the two above parcels. Town department signatures are not required on lot line changes. There's a waiver request letter from Tim Peliquin from Promised Land. Tim will give the reasons why we don't require this information for lot line. There are no state permits required. Staff would recommend approval of both the waiver and the subdivision lot line plan. And I'll turn it over to Tim Peliquin from Promise to explain the plan.
Deal. Good evening. For the record, again, Tim Peliquin. I'm a licensed land surveyor. My company is Promised Land Survey here in Derry. And representing Shirley and her neighbor, Mark Boulay, okay, who are requesting a lot line adjustment between their two lots. If you cite the plan, it's not an equal area. One lot has about 2 3/4 plus acres, 2.83 acres. And that lot is going to lose approximately, forgive me, 6,500 square feet with a small triangle in the back. The frontages will stay the same, and it's based on encroachments. If you look at the plan, there's a shed, there's pavement. The people didn't know where the lot lines were over the years, so they're adjusting the lot lines between the two amicably between the neighbors, and it's a betterment to the neighborhood. The lot with 1 acre will increase a little bit to 1.15 acres. So relatively straightforward, simple-ish. It's a 2-acre zone there, but the 1 acre lot's getting a little bigger, and the 2+ acre lot's getting a little smaller, but not under 2. So all the improvements of each lot will stay on their own lots with this adjustment, i.e. septic system, buildings, and the like, and the wells. So with that said, it's pretty simple. I'll pause for any questions the board would have, or perhaps members of the public.
We have your written correspondence regarding requests for waivers. I wonder if you would just run down each of them and indicate the justification for them?
Sure. We're asking waiver requests from the following land development control regulations, and that is for Article 5, Section 170-24A.06 to show the setback lines and on the plans. I will come back to that, maybe why. Also, Section 170-24A11 for topography on the whole site. Section 170-24A12 for high-intensity soil survey. 170-23A13 for wetland delineation. And 170-24A18 for traffic impact statements. For lot line adjustment, really none of these are necessary or required or needed. The setback lines may or may not be needed, but the fact is wetland delineation, when you can't define the wetlands exactly. We do show approximate wetlands on this plan, but we did not do a wetland delineation. So to show setbacks is not, that's one unusual thing. We'd usually show setbacks, but when you have wetlands, you can't define that precisely. So, but all the improvements are within the setbacks. I can vouch for that.
Okay, shall we have a motion to open the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to accept jurisdiction.
Second.
Oh, that was under my paperclip, sorry. Yep. Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Myers to accept jurisdiction. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We do not need to worry about regional impacts, so we can go directly to the public hearing.
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is open. Does anyone in the audience or in a remote attending audience have any comments or questions regarding this plan?
Seeing none, rise online, Mr. Chair.
If not, questions from the board?
I guess just to clarify, so both property owners that this is affecting agree to this? That's what was stated?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a letter of authorization that's presented as part of this application from both applicants, and they will both sign the plan when it goes to the Registry of Deeds.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Myers?
Just a quick question. So, Tim, this was not a result of litigation or any kind of protracted process like that?
Amicable neighbors working together.
I've seen so much protracted, elongated, excessive litigation, so it's a good thing. Congratulations for doing it amicably.
The neighbor just moved in June.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Anyone else on the board have comments or questions? Nope. If not, I'll fish for a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The public hearing is closed. So now we're on to the issue of waivers. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, based on his response onto the individual waivers, I don't see there's any issue with it. We take them all at once.
Is there any objection to taking them all at once? Hearing no objection, go ahead.
Move to grant the waivers from the following section of the LDCR, as both existing lots conform to the zoning ordinance, have existing dwellings, wells, and individual subsurface disposal systems. As no further development is being proposed with this application, the cost associated with fulfilling the regulations listed below is unnecessary. LDCR Section 170.24.A.6 shows setback lines on plan. LDCR Section 170-24A.11 topography. LDCR Section 170.24.A.12 high-intensity soil survey. LDCR Section 170.24A.13 wetland mapping, and finally, LDCR Section 170.24A.18 traffic impact statement. After review of the waiver request, the board finds that strict conformity to the regulations would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Moved by O'Connor,
Second.
seconded by Myers. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So on the matter of findings of fact. I'm fishing for a motion.
Move to, Mr. Chair, I'll move to find the proposed plan does not alter the existing conditions which would affect access to the lots, ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood remains unchanged as a result of the adjustment of the lot line.
Moved by O'Connor,
Second.
seconded by Myers. Any discussion? And I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Fishman?
Yes.
Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. And on the approval,
Might as well go, you're on a roll.
Mr. Chairman, approved pursuant to RSA 676:4, Roman numeral 3, expedited review with the following conditions. Subject to owner's signature. Subject to on-site inspection by the town engineer. And the town engineer didn't have any issues with this, okay? Establish escrow for the setting of bounds, or certify the bounds have been set. Note approved waivers on the plan. Obtain written approval from the planning director designee that the GIS disk is received and operable and complies with LDCR Section 170-24-14.c. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months. Submissions of the appropriate recording fees payable to the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds. This includes $25 L-chip fee, recording fees for the Mylar, and the notice of decision.
Moved by O'Connor,
Second.
seconded by Myers. Any discussion? Not, I'll poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. LeVoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck to you. Somebody has less grass to cut.
All right, I lost my agenda. Somebody help me. Here it is. Next item is a public hearing for Deborah L. and Robert E. Anderson, Stephanie M. Bartlett, and Thomas Gargiulo, Gerald and Christine Mafera, parcel ID 52020, 52021, 52020, 3 Lake Avenue, 58 North Shore Road, and 60 North Shore Road for a lot line adjustment.
Same thing, I won't repeat what you said, I'll make it real brief, Mr. Chairman. Again, applicants are Deborah and Robert Anderson, Stephanie Bartlett, and Tom Gargiulo, Gerald and Christine Mafera. The addresses are 3 Lake Ave, 58 North Shore Road, 60 North Shore Road. Again, the purpose of the plan is for a lot line adjustment between the above referenced parcels. No town department signatures are required for a lot line change. There is a waiver request similar to the last one. I'll let Tim explain in detail. No state permits are needed. Staff would recommend approval of both the waiver request and the lot line adjustment plan. And I'll turn it back over to Tim Peliquin, representing the owners.
Good evening again. Tim Peliquin, Promise Land Survey. I'm a licensed land surveyor here representing 3 parties on a lot line adjustment. So this one is a little bit more unusual, although comparably similar to the last one, where amicably neighbors, based on encroachments, are getting together to adjust their lines for a betterment to all parties. This fronts on North Shore Road, Lake Ave, and Pebble Lane, these 3 parcels. And I'll just walk through each of the lot line adjustments. So between parcels, I'll just call them Lot 21 and 22. Lot 21, if you look, and I wish I had, thank you, Owen. If you see a lot line that, if you guys have the plan in front of you, that lot line to be adjusted, which basically is a dashed line and it runs into the building of 58 North Shore Road. Not good for anybody. That building's been there for a long time. This is old deeds. It's old stuff. Nobody knew it. I think a surveyor maybe 20 years ago came across it and ran. But it does in fact happen like that. But that's not good for anybody. It's things like adverse possession and other things can come about with an issue like this. But fortunately, neighbors are working together amicably to make a betterment. So on that particular lot, between lots 21 and 22, there's 2 triangles that are being exchanged between the 2 neighbors. Equal land area of 2,303 square feet, where one triangle is getting added to lot 22, and the triangle that encroaches within even right up to and into the building a little bit at 58 North Shore is getting adjusted to that property. So that makes those 2 lots much more functional, especially for lot 21. Now, a little bit to the northeast is lot 20. And if you look at the busyness of that particular lot, there's a chain link fence, there's a well, there's a lot of things kind of going on there. There's a triangle there that we're proposing to add to lot 20 from lot 21 of approximately 1,438 square feet that will get added. So a very small, 0.03 acres, but it's a small triangle that will get added to that lot to put their chain link fence and functional improvements of their lot. And if you just look at the very layout of the lot, where the lot line to be adjusted angles pretty close to the house, down towards the garage at the corner of Pebble and Lake. It just looks more normal in terms of a more functional lot. It looks like that's the way the lot should lay out. It doesn't by deed and by plan. These are old plans. Some of this was done in 1966. Some of these lots were created. Some were created by deed even earlier than that. So these lots generally haven't been surveyed until recent, and some of these encroachment issues were discovered. So upon that, again, took a while for these neighbors all to kind of get together and talk about how they could resolve these encroachment issues. But again, to use the word amicably, all neighbors have amicably worked together to come up with this plan. And that's why we're here tonight, to adjust these lines appropriately. They are in water and sewer, so these small lot areas don't affect lot sizing and other things. So that's the reason, too, that we have waiver request before you for topography, high-intensity soils, and traffic impact, which won't affect anything, especially the traffic impact, but the soils and other things won't affect based on the fact that these are on sewer, even though they're small lots. Okay, I rambled long enough. I'll pause to answer any questions the
On the
board
matter
will
of
have.
jurisdiction, what is the board's pleasure?
Or have public hearing?
Well, we accept jurisdiction first.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept jurisdiction of the lot line adjustment plan before the board for Deborah and Robert Anderson, Stephanie Bartlett, and Thomas Garglio, Gerald and Christine Mefera, PID 52020, 52021, 52022, 3 Lake Ave, 58 North Shore Road, and 60 North Shore Road.
Moved by Healy, seconded by Myers. Any discussion? If not, I will pull the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Bernice.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy.
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We do not require determination of regional impact, so can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Public hearing is open. Anyone in the room or online remotely who has comments or questions, please raise them now. Either come forward or raise your hand online.
Seeing none, rise online, Mr.
Okay, thank you. I have one request, Mr. Pelquin. For future clarity, would you be willing to change all of the notations that say lot line to be adjusted to say either lot line to be abandoned or lot line to be extinguished?
Yeah,
I think that's clearer.
better wording. Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board have comments or questions?
I will say abandon isn't a good word. So to be a lot line to be removed.
Yep.
Something along that line.
Sweet.
Okay. Thank you.
If there are no other comments or questions from the board, can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, now we move on to consideration of waivers. What is the board's pleasure?
Seeing that's pretty much the same as the previous one, I believe we should accept them all at one point.
Any objection? Hearing none, go ahead.
Move to grant waivers from the following sections of the LDCR as the existing lots conform to the zoning ordinance, have existing dwellings, wells, and individual subsurface disposal systems, as no further development is being proposed with this application. The cost associated with fulfilling these regulations listed below is unnecessary. The LDCR, Section 170-24.A.11 topography, LDCR Section 170-24.A.12 high-intensity soil mapping, and LDCR Section 170-24.A.18 traffic impact statement. After review of the waiver request, the board finds that strict conformity to the regulations would pose unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Myers.
Before that is voted, may I just make one comment?
Yes.
Because I misstated something. I said these are on town water, which they are, but they're actually on private wells. but that should not affect this at all, but I just don't want to be misquoted or misstated something.
Thank you for that
by
clarification.
accident. Thank you.
Any discussion of the motion? If not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much. All right, we now need to go on to findings of fact.
Mr. Chair, I move to find the proposed plan does not alter the existing conditions which would affect access to the lots, ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood remains unchanged as a result of the adjustment of the lot line.
Second.
Moved by Healy, seconded by Myers. Any discussion? None, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next, for approval?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair, I approve the pursuant to RSA 676:4, Roman numeral 3, expedited review with the following conditions, subject to the owner's signature, subject to on-site inspection by the town engineer, establish escrow for the setting of bounds or certify the bounds have been set, note approved waivers on the plan, obtain written approval from the planning director/designee that the GIS disc is received and is operable and complies with the LDCR section 170-24-14.c. Conditions precedent shall be met for 6 years.
Months?
6 months.
6 months. Ooh. Yes. He was hoping.
Yeah.
I'm going to add the lot line terms to be changed from current adjusted to removed. And the following one, submission of the appropriate recording fees payable to the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds. This includes the $25 L-chip fee, recording fees for the Mylar, and notice of the decision.
Second.
Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Myers. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thanks so much for your
very
time.
much.
Appreciate it.
Find my agenda again. We're on to the next public hearing for Nicholas Silva and Shannon Hughes, George and Sandra Lickis, parcel ID 01139-001 03 139002, 46 Mill Road, 52 Mill Road for a lot line adjustment.
Yep, Chairman, Mr. Chairman, real quick, again, this, another lot line change. For the record, the applicant is Nicholas Silva and Shannon Hughes, and George and Sandra Lickis, 46 and 52 Mill Road. The purpose of the plans for a lot line adjustment between the above-mentioned parcels or reference parcels. No town department signatures are required. The waiver request, I said to the engineer, Ryan, or the surveyor, for the record, we didn't have one, but he probably should do the same thing we've done on the last two, so I gave Ryan the sections that he can read into the record for the waiver, because we should be consistent, similar to the last two. I'm gonna let Ryan talk to that. No state permits are required. Staff would recommend approval of the lot line application, as well as the waivers that, and I'll turn over to Ryan Lavelle, the surveyor who's representing the owners.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the board and the public, for the record, my name is Ryan Lavelle with Lavelle Associates. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today on behalf of the property owners at 46 Mill Road and 52 Mill Road regarding our proposed lot line change plan. This plan involves transferring parcel A, approximately 0.25 acres in size, from 52 Mill Road to 46, and abandoning a previous driveway and lawn easement in the process. The driving force behind this proposal is to address long-standing issues related to the location of 46 Mill Road's driveway and lawn area relative to the property line. By formalizing this adjustment, we aim to create a clearer and more functional boundary that better aligns with current use and future plans for both properties. This change isn't just about correcting past ambiguities. It's about enabling future improvements for the Silvas at 46 Mill Road. This adjustment opens up possibilities for them to consider expanding their home, something that was previously hindered by the existing property line configuration. What's more, this proposal represents a fair and equitable solution benefiting all parties involved. While 52 Mill Road will extinguish parcel A, which wasn't actively utilized, they will be compensated fairly. Meanwhile, 46 Mill Road stands to gain additional usable area and a more defined property boundary, allowing them to enhance their property value, and that'll benefit the entire community. In conclusion, this lot line change does not only resolve past issues, but also paves the way for future development opportunities that are beneficial to the neighborhood. It aligns with local zoning, and also, as George was saying, the waivers weren't formally requested, but I'm going to request the waivers at this point. They're the same as the last two. They're showing the setback lines on the plan, topography, HIS, high-intensity soil survey, wetlands mapping, traffic impact statement. And for the same reasons as the last applicants, it's just a lot line change between two parties. There is wetland located, but to the expense of the two parties, doing a whole HIS and wetland delineation and topo and stuff like that is just an added cost that wasn't necessary for what they're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask that you grab a pad and pen and actually handwrite the waiver requests before you leave, because we do require them in writing.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
I'm good.
So on the matter of jurisdiction,
Mr. Chair, I move to accept jurisdiction of the lot line adjustment plan before the board for Nicholas Silva and Shannon Hughes and George and Sandra Lickis, PID 03139-001 and 03139-002, 46 and 52 Mill Road.
moved by Healy,
Second.
seconded by Myers. Any debate questions? If not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. We can skip over regional impact. I have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of opening public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Public hearing is open, so any member of the public in the room or attending remotely who has any comments or questions of this plan, please come forward and ask them.
Seeing none, rise, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing no questions or comments from either the public or the board, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Public hearing is closed. So on the matter of waivers, which we will get from you before you leave, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
You want to read it into the record?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chair, after review of the waiver request, the board finds a strict conformity to the regulations would pose unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations. The 5 waivers are LDCR Section 170-24A.6, show setback lines on plan. Section 170-24A-11 topography. Section 170-24A.12, high intensity soil survey. Section 170-24A13, wetland mapping. And Section 170-24A.18, traffic impact statements.
Second.
So moved by O'Connor, seconded by Myers. Did you actually need all of those?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I have a
Any
copy of it.
discussion? Not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. With respect to the findings of fact, how does the board, what's the board's pleasure?
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Excellent.
I move to find that the proposed plan does not alter the existing conditions which would affect access to the lots, ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood remains unchanged as a result of the adjustment of the lot line. And that's it.
Moved by Myers,
Second.
seconded by Lavoy. Any discussion? Not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And last but not least, approval?
All right, I'll move that we approve proposed plan pursuant to RSA 676:4, Roman numeral 3, expedited review, following conditions, subject to the owner's signature, subject to the on-site inspection of the town engineer, establish an escrow for the setting of bounds, or certify that the bounds have been set. Note approved waivers on the plan which are applicable. Obtain written approval from the planning director designee that the GIS disk is received and is operable and complies with LCR section 170-20-14.c. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months. Submission of the appropriate recording fees payable to the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds. This includes the $25 L-chip fee, recordings for the Mylar, and the notice of decision.
Moved by Myers, second by O'Connor. Discussion. Not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor? Yes. Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. We are now at,
Mr. Chair, are we changing the topography of all of Derry? Everything's different now, with all these different lines?
I don't think so, Mr. Gunn, but at the fourth public hearing for Martin and Yana J. Pakarowski and Janine B. Scott, parcel ID 21009, 21010, 75 Fordway Extension and 2 Derryfield Road, a lot line adjustment and 2 lot subdivision.
Yep. Okay, do my quick staff report. This one is a little more unique, but also I'll let the do that. The applicant is Martin and Leanna Paczkowski. I hope I said that. Paczkowski, thank you, I appreciate, sorry about that. And Scott, the project subdivision is located at 75 Fordway Extension and 2 Derryfield Road. The purpose of the plan is for a 2-lot subdivision and lot line adjustment located in the medium-density residential district. There is an existing home on the parcel, one single-family building lot is being created. A variance was granted by the ZB on October 5th, 2023, to allow the subdivision of the property to allow a proposed lot to have a frontage of 100 feet where 125 feet is required, as well as to have one lot contain 0.5 where 1 acre is required. The parcels are serviced by town water and sewer. All town departments reviewed and signed plan. No waiver requests, no state permits are required. For the record, newer members, this is an older part of town. If you go down the corner Fordway and Kendall Pond Extension, it's a four-way intersection. A lot of the lots down there don't meet zoning. It used to be, they don't even meet the 1 acre zoning we had years ago. There's a mobile home park corner, there's a multifamily apartment on the other corner. It's kind of a mix of different housing types and lot sizes, just for the record. So based on that, staff would recommend approval of the plan, and I'll turn it over to Scott Boudreau, the surveyor, who's representing the owners.
All right. My name's Scott Boudreau. I'm a licensed land surveyor with Boudreau Land Surveying. I heard the plan you're looking at. When we went to zoning back in October or September, the neighbor came out and didn't agree boundary line. So as you can see on the next page, the original boundary line goes right through her shed, and she maintained a portion of the lawn which went onto the surveyed premises for the Paczkowskis. So after that meeting, she met with us, and they all agreed to a lot line adjustment. So that's kind of first with this process, is to do that lot line adjustment. Ms. Jean's owner of 2 Derryfield Road can have the land that she originally thought she had anyway. So we're cleaning that up. And then the next part is to subdivide the remaining land into 2 lots. We had to get a variance for the zoning requirements for lot size and lot width. 125 feet of frontage and width is required today. We asked for variance for that to have 100 feet. Also, 1 acre is required today, where we're looking for, where we received the variance for 0.53 acres. It matches the lots similar to the area in that neighborhood. So we went through this, did the plan set. With the lot line adjustment, we're proposing to convey 0.31 acres to the lot on Derryfield Road to Miss Scott. And then we're also proposing to create that 0.53 acre subdivision afterwards.
Okay. Thank you. And for clarification, we are handling both the adjustment and the subdivision is
Yeah,
a single
yeah.
application,
Yeah,
correct?
it's not a separate application. I mean, it's just one, right.
Okay,
I'm
letter
not by law to do that.
of jurisdiction.
I'll move to accept jurisdiction of the lot line adjustment and subdivision plan before the board for Martin and Liana Pachakarski and Jean Scott, PID 21009 and 21010, 75 Fordway Extension and 2 Derryfield Road.
Moved by Myers,
I'll second.
seconded by O'Connor. Any discussion? If not, I'll poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Because there is a subdivision involved, I guess we actually have to make the determination of regional impact. So would someone like to do that?
I'll move that this this plan as presented does have regional impact.
Okay. Moved by Myers,
Second.
seconded by O'Connor. Any discussion? And we'll, as usual, start with Mr. Chase.
No, this does not meet the definition of a regional impact. It is a small two-lot subdivision.
Mr. Healy?
No, for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Grenice?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. O'Connor?
I will follow suit with the board and say no.
Ms. Lavoy?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. Fishman?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. Feinauer?
No, for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Myers?
No, Mr. Chase said it all.
And the chair will concur with Mr. Case, no. On to the matter of public hearing. Can we have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll move that we open a public hearing on this matter.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to open the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Public hearing is open. Anyone physically in the room or out in cyberspace who has comments or questions regarding this plan, please come forward and make your comments or questions. Seeing none. Anyone online? I assume not. We haven't heard from
Oh,
Or
no,
TD
waving from the-
crew.
no.
Any questions from members of the board? Mr. Grenice?
Question. Thank you. What size house? What type of house you building on the new lot?
So we are not actually building a house. We are just looking to sell the half acre. And then it would be a single family house, but that would be up to whoever bought it.
Excuse me, could the young lady please introduce herself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Leanna Pascharkowski,
And your address?
75 Fordway Extension in Derry.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
I just had a quick question.
Mr. Myers?
Just a quick question, maybe I wasn't listening, which happens, I'm sorry. With respect to the lot of Jean Scott, did you say that the current lot size requirement under the current zoning is 1 acre?
Not for that lot. That's an existing lot.
Okay. The other lot, the requirement is 1 acre, is that right?
Yes, and that's what we get the variance for.
Okay, and so you got a variance from the ZBA, I understand that, but what is the lot size going to be pursuant to the variance?
For the Derryfield lot or the
Yeah.
proposed? The proposed lot was going to be .93 acres.
Okay, all right. But
After
you got a
that-
variance for that,
After
okay.
that transfer.
Okay, no other questions, I just didn't understand before.
Okay.
Yeah, so the parent lot,
Switch that.
the one that is donating, is going to end up at 1.00 acres.
Right. Next page.
Okay, any other questions from members of the board? Mr. Venture, do we have anybody in cyberspace who wants to talk to us?
Seeing none, rise, Mr. Chair.
Can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Public hearing is closed. So we are now on to findings of fact, because that's the only thing that's next.
All right, I move to find that the proposed plan does not alter the existing conditions which would affect access to the lots, ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the neighboring remains unchanged as a result of the subdivision plan. Further, that the proposed development would allow for providing additional housing opportunities in the community as the high demand for housing in both Derry and the state of New Hampshire continues. The plan also adjusts a lot line boundary from a 1965 plan and the location of an existing shed on the former lot line between the two parcels. And that's it.
Second.
by
Mr.
Myers?
Chair, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I wanted to note in the first paragraph that Mr. Myers read, he said subdivision plan, not lot line adjustment.
Did I read it wrong? It does say subdivision.
It is a subdivision, yeah, no problem, Lisa. Yeah, it is a subdivision.
It's both?
Both, yeah, both subdivision and lot line. Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Okay, oops. Moved by Myers and seconded by
Second.
Lavoy. Any discussion? Not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Ganese?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fisherman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. I think we're on a roll.
Okay, I move that we approve the proposal pursuant to RSA 676:4I, completed application with the following conditions. Subject to the owner's signature, subject to on-site inspection by the town engineer, establish appropriate escrow as required to complete the project, establish escrow for the setting of bounds or certify the bounds have been set. Note approved waivers on the plan. This is not applicable. Subject to the appropriate recording fees payable to the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds. This includes the $25 L-chip fee, recording fees for the Mylar and the notice of decision. Obtain written approval from the planning director designee that the GIS disk is received and is operable and complies with the LDCR section 170-24-14.c. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months.
Moved by Myers,
I second.
seconded by O'Connor. Any discussion? Not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Ganese?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, and our final public hearing this evening is FW Holdings LLC, parcel ID 32071, 5 Mount Pleasant Street for a 2-lot subdivision.
Okay. I saved the best for last because the first four were relatively easy. So this one will take a little more discussion. So just for the record, the applicant is FW Holdings LLC. The owner is Zach Witten. The property is located at 5 Mount Pleasant Street. The purpose of the plan is for a 2-lot subdivision located in the medium-high density residential district. There is an existing house on the parcel. 1 new single-family housing lot is being created. All town departments have reviewed and signed the plan. There is a waiver request from the engineer. I'll let Matt speak in detail about that. For the newer members of the board, this neighborhood is on the north side of Broadway. If you were at the golf course, where those apartment buildings are on both sides of Broadway, as you head towards the Rotary and the firehouse, Mount Pleasant is on the north side as you work your way up towards the schools back there, Grinnell School, all those side streets on the north side of Broadway. No state permits are required. This is a little unique situation. Staff would recommend approval of the subdivision plan. However, staff would recommend that we have further discussion regarding the waiver requests and obtain additional input from Public Works. I know Mark wants to speak to this. Matt Peterson, the engineer, also would like to provide additional input on behalf of his client. The issue has to do with the site distance on the driveway location. So I'll turn it over to Matt Peterson, representing the owner. Matt can talk about the plan and then the site distance and the driveway location.
All right, good evening, board. My name is Matt Peterson with Keach Norsham Associates. Here we're representing the proposed subdivision in front of the Derry Planning Board tonight at 5 Mount Pleasant Road. With me tonight is Zach Witten, who is the applicant on this project. As the introduction there that George said, yeah, I think he saved the best one for last here. I was not involved with the project. This went through a lengthy zoning board process over quite a few meetings. The previous owner of the parcel had gone to the zoning board to obtain the variances that I will outline here in a minute with the zoning board. Then he put it on the market to be sold. My client looked to purchase it. We came and met down with staff to say, hey, what are we getting involved with here? They gave us the information on the previous zoning and stuff like that. Client felt it was made sense to move forward. He purchased the property to move forward. And we're here tonight to discuss the possibility of doing a single-family home on this lot on Mount Pleasant Road. As seen on the aerial photo to the left of me here, the parcel, you can see a little red dot in the middle there. That's the house at 5 Mount Pleasant. The lot we're talking about would be kind of the grass just behind it and to the south. And then you can see the condo, the big condo building that is right on 102, that is basically would be our neighbor from that point there. So that is the part that we were looking at putting in. You can see on the plan in front of you, the big white area to the right is basically the grass area. You see kind of the only thing left in the middle there of this parcel that's there. Oh, there you go, perfect. So, you know, we're talking right into the right of that dot there. So that's the existing house right now that's out there. The variance was granted on February 16th of 2024. The variance was for frontage requirement to reduce the frontage of the 2 lots that were there. It was to allow one of the lots, as we're proposing it here, to have 22.02 feet of frontage, and the other one to have 67.71 feet of frontage. Also at that zoning board, they restricted to a certain home on site, so a smaller home to fit into the neighborhood. We have submitted plans on that. It'd be a 1-car garage that they talked about here. And obviously to get the subdivision approvals and stuff like that from there. So the zoning board, again, had gone through a lengthy time. I know that there's multiple abutters here tonight that I'm sure they can fill you in a little bit more on some of the things that were brought at that. Again, I wasn't there for those hearings. But I do have what was talked about at that hearing there. Currently, this lot is 34,536 square feet, or about 0.793 acres in size. What we would like to do, if you take a look at the subdivision plan, just for a while, he's got the aerial up there. That's the only house across the street that is a 2-family. Most everything in this area is single family. That is why we're proposing the single family here. I know I've been in front of the zoning board recently that some people have tried to do other things on Mount Pleasant the last 3 to 4 months, trying to do multifamilies and that. We believe that the single family makes sense here. We'd like to meet the intent of what happened at that zoning board hearing. We believe we're putting our best foot forward in doing so, and that's why we're here tonight to subdivide that parcel off. So the subdivision would be to, if you just throw up this. The lot that will stay with the existing house is going to be the smaller corner, the bottom left-hand corner there. That is 10,319 square feet, where 10,000 square feet is required, and has 67.71 square feet of frontage where the 100 feet is required. The second lot that we were proposing to build a single-family home on would be 24,217 square feet, and have 22.02 feet of frontage where 10,000 square feet and 100 feet of frontage is required. We have done the topographic subdivision plan. We have done the wetlands mapping. We do have the setbacks on there, as been discussed all night here. This parcel, from a topographic standpoint, at the street is about 288.9, and at the back is about 284. It does drop lower to one of the corners as we get closer to those condominiums to the south of the property there, but a relatively flat site in this area. I know that discussion has been brought up in this area that there's a lot of ledge concerns and stuff like that. The nice thing with this layout and design is that because the parcel drops off about the 5 to 6 feet to the back, I was talking to my client, if we created a 2% grade up from about midway down the driveway, we'd come in, drop it down a little bit, and then we'd climb up. We can basically sit the house on the existing grade that's out there. We also are talking about maybe doing a slab instead of basements so that we are not affecting any blasting or doing some of that work there. As I think we all know right now, construction costs have gone through the roof. Anything extra that we're doing is putting the numbers where they don't always pan out. So again, to minimize blasting, which I think helps the neighborhood, minimize the construction cost by not putting the basement there. I think it all kind of makes sense, although we're trying to, again, put our best foot forward as we move forward with this project. The biggest issue that we've had from the beginning of this, working with staff and going through the property, is that we're requesting two waivers. I'll go through the first one, which is the easier of the two here first, which is we are requesting a waiver from the requesting a waiver from Article 5, Section 170-25.A.5, General Requirements. The project is requesting a waiver of relief from this section, which states that each lot shall have its driveway access through its own frontage. If this regulation was strictly enforced, the site distance of the driveway with the proposed lot frontage would not be adequate. This would pose a risk to the public and the owner of the lot. A shared driveway that is an existing driveway affords a driver and pedestrians a much safer site distance. Therefore, granting this waiver would not adversely affect the spirit and intent of the regulations of the public convenience or welfare. On this lot here, the 22-foot of frontage that's there, we've been working with this for a few months, trying to work back and forth with everybody. There's an existing curb cut right there right now. It seems to make sense to utilize the existing curb cut on the street that's out there. This drops off to the south down Pleasant Street. I have a traffic engineer with me tonight from GPI that has written a request for the second waiver that's in front of you tonight. I'm going to explain some of it there. If you have questions, I'm going to have him get into more detail on why. But the current regulations that the town of Derry has that you're looking for us to follow are outdated. There are more current AASHTO regulations that are out there. We also feel that there's a little bit of ambiguity between the AASHTO regulations on that there. So there's a full letter in your package from GPI explaining that. We believe that currently we meet the current AASHTO requirements with utilizing the driveway that we're proposing here today. And that is why, number one, we asked for the first waiver to move it to the existing roadway that was there. And then the second request is for the site distance, which is from section 170-26.D.2 site distance.
Okay. So we actually don't have that letter in our packet, but we're getting it, so.
Oh.
Members, if you don't find it, you'll have it shortly.
That's kind of important.
Talking about that, can I ask him a question about that,
Let's let him finish, and then we'll open the public hearing, and then we'll ask questions.
Okay. I'll just read through the waiver, so at least it's there. The applicant seeking waiver for the relief from providing full site distance for the 6-inch tall object as required in the section of regulations. The proposed site distance location is within the existing driveway that enjoys access to Mount Pleasant Street. The driveway has existed at this location for many years. Mount Pleasant generally has a low traffic volume, and site distance for cars pulling the driveway according to AASHTO regulations is adequate. Therefore, granting waiver would not adversely affect the spirit and intent of the regulations or public convenience or welfare. I've got a house plan and stuff like that, but again, this is a pretty straightforward 2-lot subdivision. The traffic has been why we have not been in front of you since we submitted this a few months back in March to try to work through with staff some of the things, and that is why we ended up hiring a traffic engineer for a 1-lot single subdivision to write the letter that they wrote. So I guess I'd answer questions and comments, and it's probably going to be advantageous to have the traffic engineer explain the letter a little bit more detailed, or have to come back in another meeting if that's something the board has to take a look at, so.
So since we don't have the letter in front of us, why don't we defer that discussion until the public hearing, until we actually have it in front of us?
Okay.
So is that the summary of your presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so then on the matter of jurisdiction, what is the board's pleasure?
I move to accept jurisdiction of the 2-lot subdivision plan for the FW Holdings Zach Whidden, PID 32071 at 5 Mount Pleasant Street.
Moved by Myers,
I'll second.
seconded by O'Connor. Any discussion? If not, I'll poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We do have to talk about regional impact, so who would like to discuss that?
Pursuant to RSA 3656, the board finds that the proposal as presented at this time meets the definition of a development of regional impact.
Moved by Myers, seconded by O'Connors, and we will go first to Mr. Chase.
No, this is a two-lot subdivision in the center of town and does not meet the definition of a regional impact.
Mr. Healy?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. Grenice?
No, for the same reason.
Mr. O'Connor?
I agree with the same reason.
Mr. LeBoy?
I agree for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Fishman?
No regional impact for the same reasons.
Mr. Feinauer?
No regional impact for the same reasons.
Mr. Myers?
Mr. Chase is always such a contrarian, but I agree with him and I'll vote no.
I also agree with Mr. Chase and vote no. At this point, can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing on this matter.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Public hearing is open. Any members of the public here in the room, any abutters, any members in cyberspace who have questions or comments, now would be a good time to come forward and ask your questions. So we actually have a handheld mic on a stand over there so that you can answer questions from that position, and if you would sit down at the lectern there and give your name and address for the record.
So my name is Mark Marabito. I live at 8 Mount Pleasant Street, which is directly across from this piece of property. And again, we find ourselves here with a piece of property that was originally 92 feet, and the town, in its wisdom, decided to grant a variance. Part of that was, and I referenced this the last time I was here, that the piece of property that was in back was purchased by Walter Roby. It was purchased because the piece of property was landlocked and non-buildable. At some point, Mr. Roby incorporated that into his deed, and the reference that it was not a buildable lot was never transferred, and for some reason, that seems to have become a dead issue. Nonetheless, that back in history, that back lot was landlocked and it was not buildable because there was no way to access it. Beyond that, this variance was granted specifically with an 18-foot deviation, I guess, from the original property so that there would be an access to that back lot. And the town, I believe, said that the requirement would be a 14-foot driveway and 2 feet on either side. That was one of the primary reasons that this whole thing was granted. Now we're looking to change that and move the driveway to incorporate the existing driveway, which is on the other piece of property, and either change those lot lines or make one servient to the other. And I have nothing personally against Zach, nice guy. But we've had some circumstances where this property that I know when all of this was initially approached was that there was a betterment of the neighborhood, that this should help enhance the property and the surrounding properties. To date, it's probably been 6 months, 7 months, that property hasn't been touched. The only reason the front and side lawns are mowed is because the next door neighbors mow the property. It has all been abandoned. This property has had, because the area is ledge, has had a consistent water issue that ran through the basement. There is an installed sump pump there, and instead of that sump pump draining out into the culvert in the back left-hand side of the property, it now goes out just onto the back property, which is, for lack of better terms, creating a swamp back there. Right now, there is a property that's unmaintained, that's empty. There are large gas tanks laying on their side on the neighbor's property. There's a piece of equipment. There is a refrigerator with no door laying on its side. There is an oil tank laying on its side in the front right of the yard. This property basically looks abandoned. and we, the immediate neighbors, have had to deal with this. And again, we're finding ourselves now trying to tweak that original variance to put in this other piece of property. If, in retrospect, if this if the town was approached with a request for a separate building lot on a piece of property that only had 92 feet of frontage and asked to subdivide that, I think in reality, the town would have just said, no, it doesn't meet the overall size requirement, doesn't meet the frontage requirement. And as I said, now we're looking to, again, tweak that variance and this building approval to something else to try to accommodate getting another piece of property back there. I think the reality is it just, unfortunately, it's just not realistic. I mean, one of the things that I believe the town said was that the driveway had to be 700 or 800 feet. Everybody had a clear understanding that in order to drag a water line and sewer line out there, that there would either have to be blasting or some method of dragging that water line out there. All of this stuff still exists. I think the town was gracious enough in granting a variance on what was already an undersized lot with lack of required frontage. And I think the neighbors have done enough to try to accommodate all of this with the hope that maybe it would have made the neighborhood better. But as it stands right now, you know, I use the expression back along the way of putting lipstick on a pig. The house looks nice. It's still crooked because that's how it was built. But there are piles of debris there. I invite anybody in the town that has the opportunity to go out and take a look at this piece of property, because it's left the rest of the neighbors kind of wondering what this end result is going to be. And I'm sure that the other abutters are going to tell you the same thing, though they're welcome to do it in their own words. Thank you.
All right, so to remind the board and to inform the public, under our new rules of operation, as questions and comments are raised, we ask the applicant to immediately answer them and address them in some fashion interactively. And if you have alibi questions that are raised by that response, you're free to welcome to answer those. So you can stay right there. They have another microphone for the engineer, and we'll try to get all questions answered efficiently.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to touch upon on the site and stuff like that, when Zach originally bought this, they started going gangbusters on the house there. This was an existing three-unit building. They are converting it to a single-family unit. That's why we talked about making it more in character with the surrounding area and stuff like that. It has sat for the last 3 to 4 months since we submitted this in March, because we've hit a roadblock with staff and getting to this point here, not with staff, but with regulations and stuff like that we're working through. So Zach really is kind of, where do I stand right now? If we can't do the subdivision here, he's got to figure out what he can do with the existing house and how he can reutilize it. So to finish the work on it, not knowing, his original budget was set to do a single-family home and fix this one up. That's why the three-family going to one made sense for him. Now, if the three-family is going to only one unit, he's got to figure out what he can do with that existing house and what the market is there. So they want to get moving on this. They call me every single week to do it. But that's where the construction that did start back in, like, it must have been February, March. September of last year. Okay, the work that started last September went to a halt because of not knowing where what our finished product is going to be here. So that was at least for why it was there. As far as the variance and stuff like that, it's very clearly, and I'm sure George has it in there, the comments that he's speaking to is that the driveway is about 150 feet to the back. It's required when it's over that length to meet fire code requirements, which is the 18 feet wide and the 2-foot shoulders. That is still part of this application and stuff like that. That cannot be changed because those are the town regs that you have in front of you there. As far as you can see the wetland in the back there, I would agree that's kind of the low point of this area here. This is the grass area in the back here. So this is kind of where all the drainage in that area is kind of sitting as it goes out there. I was unaware that there was a sump pump that had an outlet going there, but It kind of looks like it's probably right at the corner where we're putting that pin, if I had to guess. And the trash pickup is what he brought up. We talked about the site where it sits there. So I believe that answered some of the questions he had.
Same issue. Driveway is not the proposed original plan based on the variance. Number one, the original driveway was set to go within the 18 feet that had been allotted off of the primary property. First, for points of clarification, it was not a three-family. It was initially a single family, and the landlord that owned it at one point took the master bedroom and turned it into a single unit. And I think if the town goes back in the notes a short time, they will find that it was done questionably, and at one point there was a fire there, and he was ordered to pay the town fire department some $26,000 because of the shoddy work that was done. So never a three-family, and questionably a two-family. It was a single-family home. It's a very small residence. It was probably in total, if I had to guess, maybe 1,500 square feet of living space. So realistically, not a three-family. Again, the purpose for buying 5 Mount Pleasant Street was that Zach bought the property just above it and renovated that, did a beautiful job on the piece of property. Clearly, 5 Mount Pleasant Street had been rented out for a couple of years. It was an absolute pit, and just a good business decision to buy this piece of property and renovate it, because he would have never been able to sell the property one lot up for, I believe, $675,000, had that massive eyesore continue to exist there. So for him, it was a good business decision to buy this other piece of property and renovate it. You know, I mean, if we're gonna put cards on the table, let's call it what it is. And again, I don't begrudge him from doing it. For doing it, that's business. As I said, there was a variance granted. The town has entertained, the planning board has entertained putting this single-family home in the back. I'm not sure that that can be stopped, nor necessarily should be stopped, but I think that there were some caveats and some restrictions that existed in order to do that, and I think that those should stay in place. They were the understanding when he bought the property. They knew going in that this was going to potentially be a can of worms. That rear acreage on the left-hand side is swamp. The rear acreage on the right-hand side is ledge. There's nothing new about that. There's outcroppings of ledge as you walk in the backyard. There is swamp. That's the reason that the culvert was put there, was as a drainage, because this whole area, including my home across the street, this whole area is ledge. Water that comes in basements just because it runs between the open portions of the ledge underground. There's nothing new. That sump pump at 5 Mount Pleasant Street, because I can hear it across the street, probably comes on, with the exception of this past couple of weeks because everything has been so dry. It comes on probably every 10 or 12 minutes, and it's pumping a decent amount of water out into the backyard. And as I said, now if you walk out in the backyard, there is probably an area that spans out from the pipe out 20 plus feet that is, for lack of better terms, a swamp.
All right, let me try to get some clarity from Mr. Siros on one of your concerns, and if I state it wrong, please let me know. The plan as presented shows a shared driveway curb cut, right? And what you're saying is,
Plan of
the plan is presented in front of us tonight.
Right.
And what you're saying is when the variance was granted, that was not part of the presentation.
Was not.
So my question to Mr. Sioris is, does the ZBA control the placement of driveways, given that's normally a planning board concern?
That would be correct. That's not their jurisdiction. Their variance, the hardship that you need to prove would be that in this case, they didn't have the frontage requirement and the lot size in the previous one we saw. So that's not a zoning board jurisdiction. Matt, if you want to let them read the record, I think, but I agree with Dave, that's not their jurisdiction on the driveway. That's a planning board issue, not a zoning board issue.
Yeah, I guess two things I'd like to just put into the record here, if George will pass around. This is the exhibit that went with the ZBA, so just so the board understands, the lots and stuff like that are following what that is. I also have a copy of the notice of decision from them, and again, what the abutter is speaking to comes down to condition number, the findings of conditions, and it's 1, 2, 3, it's number 4, and it clearly says 18 feet is the minimum width required for a driveway over 150 feet in length, 14 feet of travel surface, and 2 feet of clear width shoulders. The proposed driveway is 150 feet long. There's nowhere in here that says I can't move it to combine with that and stuff like that, so I felt that I was meeting the intent of what they have here. And this I'll just give to you, I know you have copies, but at least that's for the board to see that that's the determination they put there in front of them. So I felt that I was meeting it all with what we presented tonight. Thank you.
Well, I think we're playing semantics, and that is that the variance was granted on an undersized piece of property, and that variance was to allow an 18-foot access way off of Mount Pleasant Street. And the reason it was designated as 18 feet was because the town mandated that the driveway be 14 feet wide and there'd be 2 feet on either side. So pretty clearly, there was an intent where that driveway was supposed to go on that property.
Yes, but I guess I'm going to go by what Mr. Sioris has said, that there is jurisdictional differences between the zoning board and the planning board. We cannot question their jurisdiction with respect to zoning items and the granting of a variance. We can't have an alibi. We can't second guess or modify what they have issued in terms of variance. And when it comes to plan review, they can't proscribe things that are in the planning board's jurisdiction. And Mr. Shore is indicating that the location of the driveway is something that is part of the planning process. And that separation of powers is a matter of state law. Does anyone else have comments on that? Okay. So maybe we could make a list of the issues that might need mitigation. One is the discharge of the sump pump.
That'd be a code enforcement issue.
Well, yeah, unless it crosses property lines, and then it becomes a planning board issue. What are the other issues that you would like to see mitigated?
Well, personally, I'd like to see, I don't think there should be a house back there, but that, regardless of that, there was a variance granted with the intent to perform certain actions and divide that property up. Again, apparently the town has chosen not to investigate the simple fact that when that deed was transferred to Walter Roby, it was clearly designated as a not buildable lot. That seems to have just simply fallen away, and simply because when Walter incorporated it, and I know this because Walter was the one that told me, he bought it for tax at a tax sale because there was nothing that could be done with it. It was landlocked on all the sides. He bought it just to increase his lot size. Had it been a buildable lot, he had 4 boys. I'm sure one of those boys would have put a house in the back of that property, but he was told clearly you couldn't build on it.
So again, I'm going to ask Mr. Sioris for clarification on this. If a lot is completely landlocked, it is non-buildable. But that doesn't necessarily mean it is non-buildable forever unless it's controlled by some easement or covenant. If the landlocked situation is remedied by subdivision or lot line adjustment and it has frontage, then it becomes buildable. Is that correct?
I would agree with that. I understand what I forget your last name.
Russ is fine.
Russell's saying. Yeah, I understand what Russ is saying. And Mr. Roby, maybe that was, but and I will defer, if the surveyor, sometimes, Russell, there'll be a plan, and we've seen them over the years, that there will be a recorded plan at the Registry of Deeds. And I've been here a while now, and they will say non-buildable lot on the legal plan that recorded at the registry. Over the years, we've had people come back that buy that lot, and they come to this board and they say, can you remove that note? And they try to meet today's building requirements, and sometimes they get a variance to remove that note. So I don't disagree, maybe if that's what Mr. Roby said, but unless they have a record of something showing what Mr. Roby said, like the chairman said, they have a lot that was given a variance by the zoning board to create a new lot back there. So that's why the next step is coming here, if the planning board just does the subdivision. I hear what you're saying. I don't know if there's any proof from maybe Matt Peterson, the surveyor, if Mr. Roby had a recorded plan somewhere that showed that that was a non-buildable lot on the plan, because I've seen them before.
That would have been the town, because it's the town that sold him that lot.
Yeah, no, I understand, but sometimes there's something that has to get recorded at the Registry of Deeds saying it's a non-buildable lot. I mean, I've been here 40 years and I've never seen it.
And I'll tell you that the original deed was recorded as is.
Yeah.
Walter incorporated into his deed later on, but the original deed was simply laterally transferred from the town to Walter Roby. So all of the content within that, including the language saying that it was not a buildable lot, stayed with that original deed. The deed was never changed, just the owners, from the town of Derry to Walter Roby, Walter and Cleo Roby.
Not that I want to say out loud.
I don't mind that.
I
So-
would just add to this, Mr. Chairman, that I think most people have been on this board or been around to know that, the non-buildable lots typically don't have frontage or access to them. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have dry land or upland to use. They just can't meet the town requirements. So what most likely happened, I wasn't involved when the previous owner bought this, but when he bought land that was, buildable, it wasn't all wetland, he added to his property. His property has frontage. It becomes usable land at that point. There's multiple people that do that to get extra density for units and stuff like that when they go forward. So that's what I would assume happened when it was a non-buildable. It was just nobody knew who owned title to it in the back there probably. It's kind of this gray area in the back. And then he was the closest and he purchased it and attached it to his. So at that point, the non-buildable, it's usable land that has now frontage that meets the town. I think you guys have a definition of non-buildable probably in your regulation that say, no frontage and no access, and it can't do not on a class 6 road, class 5.
Chair, if I may, for both of our speakers, if we could ensure proximity to the microphone, just so the people at home can hear.
Yeah, so when you hear feedback, backing up is actually counterintuitive.
Okay.
No, get closer to the microphone and the guy in the back room will lower the volume and you won't have feedback.
All right, sorry, thank you.
All right, so this is an issue, this would be a finding of law. We make findings of fact. This would be a finding of law as to whether there is a legal impediment on the land that runs with the land, that it makes it unbuildable. I don't have experience in order to adjudicate that, and I don't know if anyone else here on the board does.
Well, if there's a question regarding the zoning board, usually you have 30 days to either apply to the Superior Court, or we now have in the state of New Hampshire, the Land Use Board, which was supposed to expedite a lot of these reviews. So I believe, looking at the dates, that it was well over 30 days, so.
Mr. Chase?
So, in my time on the board, the surveyor is correct. Once that back piece of land that was landlocked was purchased, as long as it was consolidated, there was a lot consolidation, that back lot was consolidated with the front lot, it became one lot, which brings us to the point that we're here now. Once they were consolidated, it's a lot of record that has frontage. What the zoning board has done has granted them the possibility of the two-lot subdivision with inadequate frontage on the back lot. So once they were consolidated, it's no longer a non-buildable lot. And what we're here to do now is decide whether a further variance allows, whether we will allow a two-lot subdivision there. One lot with inadequate frontage. So the non-buildable lot is moot. As soon as those lots were merged, that is moot. So this is actually, this is a site plan for a two-lot subdivision.
That is my understanding as
That's
well.
all that we're concerned with.
If it was non-buildable because of failure to have frontage, as soon as it gains frontage by a merger or a lot line adjustment, is no longer buildable. My understanding, and I stand to be corrected if I'm misstating, the only way it is permanently non-buildable is if it's subject to an easement or a covenant, such as a conservation easement, and somebody has sold off the development rights for some money, and there's a contract and there's a recorded deed that says it is non-buildable for those reasons.
Correct.
And I don't
I've heard
see any
nothing
evidence
here.
in front of us that that's the case.
No, I've seen, never is, yeah, and I'm sure it would have been brought up to zoning if that was the case, and I've seen nothing in the record here that shows that that was the case. So we're just here for a two-lot subdivision.
I agree with Mr. Chase totally. He and I both served in the zoning board a long time ago, and we saw cases like that where a lot was designated as non-buildable because it doesn't have frontage or maybe there's some other condition. But just because a lot or a deed says that it's non-buildable doesn't mean it's non-buildable forever.
Correct.
If, as in this case, another lot was joined to it, that goes away.
Yep.
That just goes away. So that's the way I see it.
So are there other points that we should be considering?
None.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public like to address the plan? Come forward, please. Give your name and address for the record.
Bruce Brown, 6 Hood Road, Derry. And I have to say, most of my questions were just answered, along with something else. But there is one important feature on the map that I would like to point out to the board. In the back of the lot, you're going to notice a stone wall. Through my consultations with Mr. Holmes back in 2009, 2010, that is original Hood family wall that was built in the 1840s and is now protected under law by the New Hampshire State Legislature. And the only reason I know that is I've got a section of wall at the back of my property at 6 Hood Road. So when I was looking to do something with the wall, because it was kind of in disrepair, Mr. Holmes was telling me that you really can't destroy the wall or do anything with it unless you have cooperation or permission from the abutters. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. This was a law that was passed like in 2008 or 2009. There was some lady out in Londonderry that went for a walk one day and found out half of her stone wall was missing. They're stealing the rocks off her wall to use as retaining walls. And so it got brought up to Concord and it was passed. So from the best of my knowledge, that wall goes back to 1846, that section of it. And I don't know if there's something that could be put in the record somewhere so that any future owners will know. I mean, there's going to be a day where I have to sell my property, and I'm going to have to leave something in the record for me.
Yeah, I spoke with Bruce, Mr. Brown, in the office. I said the board can make that decision. I'm just thinking out loud here that maybe, you know, if you conditionally approve this, you could say that maybe that stone wall should be retained. It's not like a scenic road like English Range Road where those walls have to stay out there. But if there's some wording that you want to say that maybe that if best possible to retain that stone wall that goes back to 1846, some note on the plan or show it some way that that could be a conditional approval.
I see no reason not to,
Yeah,
although
and-
my understanding is there's also longstanding state statute that says if a stone wall is a boundary, it may not be disassembled ever.
Oh, so I didn't know, I wasn't aware of that.
I mean, that's been around for a long time.
And the legislature, just as Bruce said, that happened a few years ago. They strengthened that law to maintain those stone walls. So what was happening is people, and this is a true story, were moving from other parts of the country because they love the New England stone walls. People were stealing the stones. John was a state rep, taking those walls and putting them to a new development somewhere else. So the state legislature said, we got to stop that, and it really gives you more teeth on that stone wall protection law.
And, Mr. Chair, if we go forward with this, then we should cite the particular, if the gentleman's correct, and I'm trying to recall, because I was Azure State rep at that point in time, and I'm gonna check my files when I get home tomorrow. And we'd have to cite the particular RSA that it's protected based on, being part of the hood. Because I have a stone wall, it's actually part of the Hood family too.
And we should also state the law that says you can't disassemble stone walls that are actually boundary lines.
If it's in the state legislature, we could say that.
No, I mean, that law has been on the books forever.
Yeah.
Plus, in addition to that, isn't it also a felony to remove stones from a stone wall? In addition to the legislation you're talking about, isn't it also a felony?
Over $1,000 worth, I believe.
Yeah, I
you're
think
correct.
so.
Okay.
All right. So I have no objection to making a condition of approval to reinforce the protection that's already there by state law.
Yeah, because the wall isn't just in the back of this, it continues up and actually acts as a boundary for 4 Hood Road, which is the Kavanaugh property as well. And then years ago, when they built Hood School, the town destroyed the part of the wall where Lennox Road is now to make room for Lennox Road to go all the way over and connect onto Hood Road. So a lot of it has already been destroyed and taken away. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out to the board. The second thing I'd want to point out to the board is that there's been an awful lot of talk about water and the water in the back of the property down back. There's another contributor to that, and that is if you go uphill to Lennox Road, there's no storm drains or anything up there. So back when we had the Mother's Day floods in 2006, and we had 15 inches of rain, it pours off Lennox Road, goes below ground, past Sue's house, all the way back down to where you've got this wetland now. So there's more than just a sump pump contributing to the water. And the town, we've got storm drains over on Hood Road. I think you got 1 or 2 on Mount Pleasant Street, but that is a particular problem for whoever owns the property or whoever develops the property. There's gonna be some kind of a water issue there, unless it's dealt with. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing is, unbeknownst to a lot of people in Derry, I don't know if you talked with the Conservation Commission at all, anywhere along the line, but our neighborhood is kind of like conservation, I don't know what you want to call it, conservation park. We've got 3 areas of woodlands. One section was down behind Walter's property, where all of this is that you're looking at. The deer used to come in, of course, and like to have a field day with his garden. But there's a wooded area to the north side of my property on Hood Road that is school district property. There's another area of woodlands on Hood Road between the Church of the Transfiguration and Etz Hayam Synagogue in behind there. So when you have building going on in the town, we've got animals coming out of nowhere. We had a fisher cat 4 or 5 years ago. We've had rabid coyotes. Somebody gained permission to have a chicken coop up at the end of Mount Pleasant Street where that other house, we had something very terrible happen. And because that chicken coop is there, we got fox going through the back of my yard, whatever, so whoever is in there, welcome to the neighborhood and watch out for the animals. And that's all I've got to say. So unless there's any questions anybody wants to ask me. I mean, I don't recognize anybody here except Randy and George, so, okay. Yeah, well, I'm 66 years, so I'm proud of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else in the room who would speak? Come forward, please. Give your name and address for the record.
Jason regarding 96.
Oh, wait till you're on tape.
Sorry.
Got to be on the mic.
Thank you. Jason Regani, 96 East Broadway. I'm actually the abutter behind this property. My concern is all about the water. My basement used to get flooded for quite a while. They diverted the water underneath someone else's home that goes to the, to the golf course. But if too much things are moved around, I'm afraid that I'm gonna have more of an impact due to the house is the original Hood family home, so I do have all stone basements, things like that. And we do get a lot of water on the top part of my land, which is at that very back side where that house is going. That has been my concern the whole time when they were talking about developing it and taking it from just an open spot of land which will absorb some of the water to a house that will divert more water towards my house.
So, Mr. Stewart, let me, again, pick your brain. We have regulations in the LDCR that indicate that the net off-site flow of water in the post-development condition cannot be greater than the pre-development condition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so there has to be some engineering done, and if there's a problem, it has to be remediation, because you can't build a house and because of that, cause your neighbors to get flooded.
And I think, maybe when we get further in the discussion, I'm looking at Mark, that Mark can talk a little bit when we get into the driveway and the drainage, because I know Mark has some comments on that, so.
But we wouldn't deal with that.
No, you wouldn't, you cannot increase it like David said, right?
But my understanding is also that we don't expect new applicants to make existing conditions better.
That's correct, yeah.
I'm not looking for them to make it better, I just don't want it to get worse. That's my
Yeah,
concern.
not getting worse is in our regs.
Okay, that's my only concern, thank you.
Anyone else in the room have questions or comments?
Seeing none online, Mr.
None online. Second. So we'll give you some moments. We'll see what comments the board has, and if you have additional questions based on that, we'll give you a second chance. Questions and comments from the board. Mr. O'Connor.
Yes, I want to go back to comment that the engineer made on the ash chute, that we are not up to par or in regulations. Now, the state of New Hampshire is not a home rule state. And similar to the building codes and the fire codes, and I'm not familiar because I never dealt with the ash chute codes up at the State House, that only if they're accepted a certain date, that can they be moved on, and then the town accepts them itself. So if there is the ash chute standards been adopted by the recent legislative body, you know?
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, Robert Bollinger, licensed professional engineer, Greenman Peterson, at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire. I cannot cite you chapter and verse what the state legislature has adopted or not adopted. Just in the course of me going about my daily routine as a licensed engineer, we typically rely on the published AASHTO guidelines on virtually a daily basis. The most recent were published in 2018. That's what my letter is based on in your packet. And it would be my testimony this evening that irrespective of how the town regulations are written, based on the current national standard regarding site distance, that the driveway as proposed would satisfy all minimum site distance requirements.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Shores or Mr. LaRue, can you tell me the chapter and verse in which our site regulations exist so that I can compare it to what the engineers are talking about?
Page 36 of 96. It's section 170, 26 streets, D, stopping site
It
distance.
does actually talk about stopping site distance,
Yep.
which they call out. But the claim is that the 6-inch versus the 2-foot
Yeah, it's basic.
object at the site distance is in our section that it's called stopping site distance, but they claim it's actually in a different AASHTO regulation section. Do you have any comment on that?
There's numerous AASHTO requirements as far as like site distance and stopping site distance. This is just the excerpt that's been taken from an older version, which we've looked at, we've talked about internally in Public Works. In my time here, I've made it a point to check site distances personally. even if I have to get on the ground and do it with the 6-inch object. What I find, and I'm not saying that this is the case here, is that there's some liberties taken with the sight distance from driveways, because sometimes it's difficult to achieve and it takes work, and you've gotten a lot of applications that need to be cleared and rock walls and all kinds of things. So this is applied to everything in town, and we've kind of left it alone, even though, you know, there's been some pushback on it during meetings, during TRC meetings with other professionals. But I think this is a good standard to stay with. It compels everybody to make sure to pick the best spots. This is a very important aspect of safety with regard to egress and ingress into driveways. We feel is important. It's based on an old principle that you see a 6-inch object coming out of a driveway, and the driver is supposed to be able to see it and stop in case a kid's chasing after a ball. That's where this comes from. They've gotten away from it, but I don't think it's a good idea personally, just because if you go 3.5 or 2 feet or whatever from eye to eye, that's great, but you don't always capture everything in between. Things get missed, overlooked, and sometimes they don't really certify the sight distance or check it. And I think this is a good practice for us to maintain it. It can almost be achieved in anywhere in town. In this specific spot, I will say, to the point in my concern regarding the waivers, this project created its own hardship. You have a driveway that really doesn't meet our regulation right now, and then you want to compound it with another shared driveway. And I believe the intent of that zoning change, based on how I viewed it, was that they intended the driveway to be on its own lot. That was clear in the drawing and clear in the literature to me. I don't think it's, you know, if they want to prove a hardship, great, prove a hardship based on the characteristic of the neighborhood, the restrictions, things of that nature. But to go after the regulation itself, I don't believe that's a hardship.
So can someone tell me why the shared driveway was initially proposed? I guess I'd gotten the opinion from quickly reading some of the material that was in an attempt to address sight distance.
I think it was an attempt to improve the sight distance, to have the shared driveway, because there's a little bit of a more difficult angle to keep it in that that piece of land that was righted to the right of way. The angle to go around the house next to it was more difficult to achieve that.
So there is
Could I add to that, Mr. Chair?
a diagram here. Can someone address this for me?
Yep. Can I first respond to a couple things which you just said there and why we went with the common driveway that was there? My firm, Keach Nordstrom, I've been doing this 30 years here now. One of my big things I always try to do is work with staff, work with town. I think George can relate to that, and I know Mark is the same thing as that. As he just stated there, he believes that this is the regulation the town should follow. That's fine. He's your representative. He represents you guys there. We've got to follow federal regulations on 99% of the projects. This is really the first time I've come across this, that I've seen somebody prefer that. So that's fine. That's his preference. He's got his reasons for it. They make sense. So we felt a combination would be to come back and do a common driveway, because it's an existing driveway that's already out there. It's been out there for 50 years, 60 years, it's there. So we felt that that was a good compromise between the two, as long as it was safe. And again, we hired an independent traffic engineer, not from my firm. We do traffic studies, we do traffic reports. We hired an independent traffic entity to tell me, am I doing something wrong? Am I doing something that doesn't meet the federal regulations, that is not safe? And what we submitted to you is a letter that says, no, everything out there with a common drive is safe. However, we are not meeting the preference of the town of Derry to have it safer. that's you're right, I get it. I'm not saying against that, but I'm allowed to ask for the waiver as well, and that's why I'm in front of you. And this is where it's been 4 or 5 months to try and figure out where we could kind of compromise and come back to, and we thought the common driveway was that. The plan is the amended one, the June 14th one that I saw you had up there. If you slide down here, do you want to walk them through this one here?
I think you're running the show pretty well yourself, but basically what Keach Nordstrom was able to put together based on some calculations provided by my office, this is a typical sightline diagram that you would see based on driver's eye height to driver's eye height. And what this effectively portrays is that there are no obstructions. I've got a few gray hairs myself, and I certainly do remember a time when the 6-inch criteria was utilized, when that was the preferable, well, not just preferable, but that was the standard. And again, I'm not here to argue whether or not your regulation is right or wrong. It's my testimony that based on published criteria from 2018, which is the most recently published national criteria, that this driveway meets all minimum sight distance requirements. And again, I can't stop you from arguing that you want more than the minimum, but the minimum is the minimum for a reason. 60 might be a minimum passing score on a test. I'd love to get a 95, but I got a 60, I passed. That would be my testimony this evening, that you are meeting minimum safety requirements in terms of your sight distance. Again, to Matt's testimony earlier, this is an existing driveway that's been there for well over half a century, if not longer. And I don't have a lot more to add to this unless Matt does, but essentially, again, just to clarify or reiterate, that diagram basically is a graphical depiction indicating that we feel minimum sight distance is satisfied.
So are you suggesting that because you now are proposing a shared driveway, that shared driveway has the same grandfathering as the original driveway?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm not proposing any grandfathering. We are specifically saying that we meet the current AASHTO requirements. We are asking a waiver from your preferred regulations that the town of Derry has. I have to make sure that we stamp these, if this thing got approved and built, somebody pulls out of there and gets hurt, there has to be record, there has to be stuff that this is safe. And we have shown that by the documentation we have submitted to this planning board, that this meets federal requirements and is safe from those standpoints. So I'm not saying it's grandfathered. To me, it was a combination of trying to work with the town and trying to get their regulation that was a little more constrained on that. So no, I'm not saying it's a grandfathered. I'm just saying it was a compromise to work with all, but we also made sure that that driveway met the current AASHTO requirements.
So, Mr. LaRue, I think I understand. We have a reg, and it requires the 6-inch object test, and that was the standard at a certain point in time. If I believe the engineer's testimony, that the standard has evolved since then, and they have relaxed that to a different number, but we in Derry have decided to keep the older standard as our town standard. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't made any changes to it. It's been that way since before my time. I will add on the shared driveway, just to have, background on shared driveways. They're more of a burden for the town going forward. The more shared driveways you have in town, they're going to be more of a burden. I want to reiterate that because this is the pattern that we're seeing all the time. More shared driveways, less restrictions, because we want to build more, build more, build more. The shared driveways are a burden to fire safety, the police department, having to deal with neighbors that are in conflict, things like that. That's something that builds over time. I just want to remind you of that aspect of the resources that we have.
Yeah, I understand that's one of the historic reasons for looking askance at shared driveways is because it might be fine with the first set of neighbors, but as time goes on, and they don't get along, then you get all sorts of problems and lawsuits and code enforcement issues, and so we would prefer not to do them.
It's a very difficult neighborhood with narrow roads, driveways in close proximity. Winter maintenance becomes another compounding problem for everybody.
So if I can summarize, and we'll ask again, the issues I've heard are, one, the water issue, which we have to come up with a plan, some sort of mitigation for that. Two, noncompliance with the town's site distance regulation. And if I'm not speaking on a bounds, usually the way that is solved is by off-site improvements to improve the site distance, is that correct?
If you have rights to those properties.
So the board is faced with the request for the waiver. You've heard from the engineers and their rationale, you've heard from the town's engineer and the town's rationale, and it is up to the board to determine whether granting the waiver is reasonable, whether there actually is a hardship, whether the spirit of the regulations would be met if we granted the waiver. And so
Mr. Chair?
I understand the two positions. I'm not sure where we go between them.
Would it be proper to do a site walk to review the area? Excuse me, lose my voice.
We certainly could,
right,
especially if there's
just bring
something
it up.
specific that we want to see. If we're going to, have a 6-inch ball somewhere and we're supposed to look at it, that might be instructive. Mr. Chase, you have your hand up, or is that?
I do too.
No.
Oh, that was-
Mr. Healy?
Well, now that I've been recognized, I have an issue.
I didn't know whether you had your hand up or you were going to beat Mr. Healy with a ruler.
I was beating myself in the head with a ruler. The way the driveway comes into the existing driveway is not by scale, that's why I have the ruler, allow a vehicle to square itself up to really have a good sight distance to the left. It's coming in awful sharp, close to the street. I have a big problem with that.
That is true. I see what you're talking about.
Mr. LaRue, so if the driveway did come in down through the 20-foot frontage, what is the issue with sight distance there? I've heard nothing
It's
testified to that.
I think it's more difficult to look down towards Broadway.
Objects in the way, or just the topography?
Just because of topography, the raised yard in front of the lot 72.
So that's worse than the shared?
I
Or-
couldn't tell
'cause
you
it's
how.
so close together, I
They're
can't see how-
close. I mean, it's difficult because it's brushed and it's not graded right now. So you really, you'd have to project the improvement. So I couldn't tell you for sure
Yeah.
what's better or worse.
Yeah.
But they're similar. They're very close. But at least you could do more improvements there, and it could be improved. You could raise it, add fill.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's kind of a gully.
Okay. The frontage, the new frontage.
The new frontage portion, yes. Yep.
Just to add a little to that there, because it's only 14.5 feet back, there's only so much climb I can do with the grade to get it up. I would love to do that. Looking down Mount Pleasant Street, the issue that we've run into is typically what we've seen with this ASHTO is that you're wanting to see a ball rolling in the street. That's why it's typically now at the edge of the travelway, because that's where you see it. When you put a ball back 14.5 feet and Mount Pleasant Street is curbed, curbing is 6 inches right there. I can't even see over the curbing coming up Pleasant Street to that ball. So it's take out the curbing on Mount Pleasant. It's because of the grade change as it drops down Mount Pleasant, the curbing that's there, and then there's a little, it's literally the house to the south, it's his grass. I mean, it's just the way his grass is. It's that technical, like you were saying, to see it. It's not like it's raised up 10 feet and I could cut it down. I think you'd have to spin the other way on this here, but, oh, okay, no, I'm sorry, to the right. So, and down the street, if you go down the street a little bit. So it's that, so one more step down, see his front yard right there? It's that hill right there. I mean, I don't know how you're making this work on other sites. I know Mark says new projects come in and they do it. I can't get over that little rise, 6 feet back, 14 and a half feet. I can't take down his yard anymore. Like, I don't know what else I'd take it down. So this is why we didn't come back in March. I understand Mark's comments. I don't know how to meet them. We meet ASHTO, we meet current requirements on that.
Sir, may I make a comment?
Sure.
So I think Mr. LaRue said it quite well. It summarized me very well. I guess we have established rules to go by in this town. One of my colleagues sitting in this board about a month ago said they're not designed to be wavered just to accommodate at the whim. Somebody should have done their homework when they purchased the property with the idea of thinking they could build on it. In my opinion, this is not a waiverable item. It's not a hardship that's been any more than self-imposed. We have rules. It should be cut and dry.
Anyone else have thoughts?
No, sir.
Just looking at the street view, is that telephone pole that's near the driveway, does that come into play? That seems like that would probably be in the site distance as well. That seems, if the driveway is a shared driveway and it gets a little bit bigger, you're getting awfully close to that telephone pole.
The pole would stay for that. It would come down if we put a driveway on the 22-foot spot that was there. And we've talked to Eversource about that as well.
You looking at me?
I'm looking for additional, I mean, we have to make a decision, up or down, yea or nay. We can punt that down the road if we want to take a site walk first, but at some point we have to make a decision on the waiver request.
I agree. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I like the idea of a site walk, and I think doing the site walk would give us a better clarity of granting the waivers. Because I don't think that we could do due diligence granting a site distance waiver before a site walk, if we're gonna do a site walk.
Are there, at this point, we're getting to deliberations. Are there any other questions from members of the public or members of the board before we close the public hearing? Hearing
So we
none.
move to close the public hearing, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, the public hearing is closed, and I think before we go too much further, the appropriate thing would be to determine if we want to schedule a site walk, because at that point, we will continue this application to a future date.
I think it's a good idea. I agree with what Mr. Bernisi said. I think it's a good idea to I agree with what my colleague here said. I mean, I come from an engineering family, and I understand that it's a federal regulation, it's a national regulation that comes from Washington. It's a federal regulation. I heard that it's a federal regulation, but coming from a engineering family, I understand that before one designs anything, one looks at the criteria and rules that apply to that particular project and not just some other ones that may or may not apply. So I'm inclined against this, but, you know, maybe I could be convinced otherwise on a site walk, so I would agree to a site walk. I would agree to continue this and do a site walk.
Give you a different perspective.
No, I'm agreeing with Mr. Granisi.
Somebody's going to make a motion to schedule a site walk.
I hereby move to schedule a site walk. We should all look at our books and figure out a good date for a site walk.
Okay, I will poll the board whether we should schedule a site walk. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Now, we probably should get our calendars, because then we need to make a follow-on motion to continue this to a date certain.
That's the easy part. The date certain would be August 14th is our next meeting, so you can continue the plan to August 14th, but you obviously want to do a site walk between now and August 14th. The other advantage this time of the year, as members know, we've had them at 6 o'clock. It's still light out versus a Saturday morning.
Yeah, personally, Saturdays tend to be busy for me, so an otherwise, unengaged evening, for example, a Wednesday evening where I might otherwise be here, might be available at 6.
Do you want to do it the week before, which would be August 7th? That's your normal Wednesday night. Is that an option at 6 o'clock?
For me. Does anyone object to scheduling a site walk on August 7th?
6 p.m.
Can I ask the applicants whether you will grant the board and any interested abutters and the public to attend, because it is a noticed public meeting?
We would agree to continue, is that what you asked, Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the agenda there. Manchester ZBA is is there the 31st, the Wednesday before? I mean, I can send somebody to my office, but I kind of like to stay attached to it if possible, but if that's the only date you can do, is that
No,
Wednesday?
Wednesdays are fine. We could, that's right, there's an extra Wednesday this month, at the 31st.
I'm gonna object
July?
to the 31st.
No,
Going
that'd be good for
once,
me.
going twice, okay. So we'll schedule a site walk on the 31st, and then I need a motion to continue this application until August 14th.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved by Mr. Myers, seconded by Mr. O'Connor to continue the motion, continue the application to a date certain on August 14th. Any discussion? Poll the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Gurnese.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Bowe.
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
And Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
And Mr. Chairman, just for the record, could you say we don't notify the abutters again on a
Yeah, so when
continuation?
it's continued to a date certain, there is no more certified notice to abutters. This is your notice that we will continue this hearing at the next scheduled meeting.
Mr. Chair, we have a request to the engineer. If they're not staked out, the driveway that's, you have proposed for the future, if you had 4 stakes to show where that's going,
Absolutely.
and on one of the prints, you also had electrical service. Is that referring to those green boxes that usually you see on the ground, or is that a telephone pole?
What page are you?
I'm on 2 or 4.
2 or 4, and whereabouts?
It's within the paved driveway on the left-hand side. It says electric service.
Yeah, I think that's, excuse me, I believe that's just the overhead line, because there's an overhead line right there, and it looks like that text is right next to it.
Okay.
But I will confirm what that is. I see what you're looking at.
Okay.
And would there be any
Mr.
issue
Chair.
for Mr. LaRue, any, for the sites? Should we have him mark off where there may be potential problems?
Sure.
Mark off where on the line of sight, so if we had spray paint or chalk,
Stake driveway and sight
so
lines.
that we have an area, get a sense of what's going on.
Stake out driveway and, okay, yep.
Mr.
All right,
Chair.
so is it a question?
Yes, there's a question. Given I understand this is about the site distance, but given the potential concerns about the water issue in that area, does the board have jurisdiction during that site walk to look at that issue, or is there at least assurances in this plan that the proposed driveway or follow-on building
There's
is?
nothing that prohibits us to consider any of the issues that are in evidence tonight.
If we're going to be there on a site walk, it seems like a good opportunity. It would be a wasted opportunity not to look at that, lest that issue comes up at a later date. We had multiple abutters here bringing up the concerns about future construction, increasing the amount of water runoff, the suitability of the site to begin with. There's no analysis here to really show the current water conditions of the ground unless I'm missing something.
Well, we have to a little careful. We have already continued the hearing, which means it is adjourned. And so discussing what we're going to do on the site walk is cool, but continuing the hearing on the applications it has to wait until August 14th.
Certainly. Just looking to maximize the opportunity of that site walk. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that or talk about that.
Okay. So at this point, we are on to board member comments.
Thank you very much, board. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Any board member comments?
Can I just confirm we're doing the site walk July 31st at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm. That's what
Somebody
we do.
please send us a reminder.
We will. Just for the parking, it's tight up there, so you may want to, is there still parking on Broadway, or did we eliminate those
We
public?
eliminated that.
All right,
The apartments.
you
are
may
shut
have to
down.
park a street or two over. It's very tight up in those, that neighborhood. Those streets are very narrow, so. Maybe you could park at Grinnell School. Seriously, you could park at Grinnell Elementary School and just walk down the hill.
That would probably be a good
Bruce
idea.
Brown's house. Your house? Mr. Brown offered to, and Mr.
So we'll get a
Briani did
parking
too.
map circulated.
So we have two abutters that offered their houses.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there are no board member comments, then maybe a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay.
I want to stay here all night.
Stand adjourned.